Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we are going to start off by rewinding time a little because we are getting a bit close to the end and we are at a chapter start. So I'm going to do it before we start the chapter so that it's not interrupting mid-chapter. And we're just going to get as far... Well, we're going to manage to get back all the way up to birthday. Well, we're going to be able to get as far back as we can in time without a problem. So that'll start the reading a little bit late compared to normal. That's fine, because we do need to do this. And then we'll probably have to do it again when we get to probably around page 300 to 350 or something. Maybe. It is just a little time consuming. But it is something we need to do. One more blue fire and we should be good. Dum-de-dum. And there we are, we're as far back in time as we can get. At least for now, anyway. So I am going to wait for time to go back to normal before I actually start reading. Just because... Oh, there it goes. Anyway. So let's continue with The Sleeper Awakes by H.G. Wells. Chapter 8. The Roof Spaces. As the fans in the circular aperture of the inner room rotated and permitted glimpses of the night, dim sounds drifted in thereby. And Graham, standing underneath, was startled by the sound of a voice. He peered up and saw in the intervals of the rotation, dark and dim, the face and shoulders of a man regarding him. Then a dark hand was extended. The swift vein struck it, swung round and beat on it with a little brownish patch on the edge of its thin blade, and something began to fall therefrom upon the floor, dripping silently. Graham looked down, and there were spots of blood at his feet. He looked up again in a strange excitement. The figure had gone. He remained motionless, his every sense intent upon the flickering patch of darkness. He became aware of some faint, remote, dark specks floating lightly through the outer air. They came down towards him, fitfully, eddyingly, and passed aside out of the uprush from the fan. I'm just going to double check I didn't accidentally double click there. Yeah, I didn't. A gleam of light flickered, the specks flashed white, and then the darkness came again. Warmed and lit as he was, he perceived that it was snowing within a few feet of him. Graham walked across the room and came back to the ventilator again. He saw the head of a man pass near. There was a sound of whispering, then a smart blow on some metallic substance, effort, voices, and the veins stopped. A gust of snowflakes whirled into the room and vanished before they touched the floor. "Don't be afraid," said a voice. Graham stood under the vane. "Who are you?" he whispered. For a moment there was nothing but a swaying of the fan, and then the head of a man was thrust cautiously into the opening. His face appeared nearly inverted to Graham. His dark hair was wet with dissolving flakes of snow upon it. His arm went up into the darkness, holding something unseen. He had a youthful face and bright eyes, and the veins of his forehead were swollen. He seemed to be exerting himself to maintain his position. For several seconds neither he nor Graham spoke. "You were the sleeper," said the stranger at last. "Yes," said Graham. "What do you want with me?" "I come from Ostrog, sire." "Ostrog?" The man in the ventilator twisted his head round so that his profile was towards Graham. He appeared to be listening. Suddenly there was a hasty exclamation, and the intruder sprang back just in time to escape the sweep of the released fan. And when Graham peered up, there was nothing visible but the slowly falling snow. It was perhaps a quarter of an hour before anything returned to the ventilator, but at last came the same metallic interference again. The fan stopped, and the face reappeared. Graham had remained all this time in the same place, alert and tremulously excited. "Who are you? What do you want?" he said. "We want to speak to you, sire," said the intruder. I can't hold the thing. We have been trying to find a way to you these 3 days." "Is it rescue?" whispered Graham. "Escape?" "Yes, sire, if you will." "You are my party, the party of the sleeper." "Yes, sire." "What am I to do?" said Graham. There was a struggle. The stranger's arm appeared and his hand was bleeding. His knees came into view over the edge of the funnel. "Stand away from me," he said, and he dropped rather heavily on his hands and one shoulder at Graham's feet. The released ventilator whirled noisily. The stranger rolled over, sprang up nimbly and stood panting, hand to a bruised shoulder, and with his bright eyes on Graham. "You are indeed the sleeper," he said. "I saw you asleep, when it was the law that anyone might see you." "I am the man who was in the trance," said Graham. "They have imprisoned me here. I have been here since I awoke, at least 3 days. The intruder seemed about to speak, heard something, glanced swiftly at the door, and suddenly left Graham and ran towards it, shouting quick, incoherent words. A bright wedge of steel flashed in his hand, and he began, tap, tap, a quick succession of blows upon the hinges. "Mind!" cried a voice. "Oh!" the voice came from above. Graham glanced up, saw the soles of 2 feet, ducked, was struck on the shoulder by one of them, and a heavy weight bore him to the earth. He fell on his knees and forward, and the weight went over his head. He knelt up and saw a second man from above, seated before him. "I did not see you, sire," panted the man. He rose and assisted Graham to rise. "Are you hurt, sire?" he panted. A succession of heavy blows on the ventilator began. Something fell close to Graham's face, and a shivering edge of white metal danced, fell over, and lay flat upon the floor. "What is this?" cried Graham, confused, and looking at the ventilator. "Who are you? What are you going to do?" "Remember, I understand nothing." "Stand back," said the stranger. and drew him from under the ventilator as another fragment of metal fell heavily. And with that, we come to the end of the episode. So I will say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.